Good evening. My name is Jeff Smith. I am chairperson of the Webster Groves Plan Commission. We are a 9-member board of citizens appointed by the city council to review development proposals and make recommendations to the city council regarding future development of the city. In addition to the members of the Plan Commission participating in person or via teleconference, we have one. We have a few other representatives of the city I would like to introduce. Alexander's not here. City Attorney Peter Buntrager. Planning Development Director Mara Perry, and Denise Oleski, our recording secretary. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's monthly meeting of the commission and take this opportunity to explain how we operate. As indicated in our agenda, we will begin with the regular session of the meeting when we will hear new applications for rezoning or subdivisions. We will hear a staff report and the applicant will explain the proposal. We will then ask for comments from the public. At that time, anyone with an interest in the proposal may indicate to city staff they have a question or would like to express their opinion by clicking on the raised feature hand in Zoom or filling out a speaker card. To make sure that we accurately record your name, we ask that you identify your full name and address at the beginning of the comment. When you make your comments, we ask that you be as concise as possible and not repeat a point made by a previous speaker. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. One person who is speaking for an organization may have 6 minutes to comment. After all citizens have spoken, the applicant will be asked to respond to any questions that have been raised during the hearing. When we have finished reviewing one proposal, we will move on to the next application. Comments concerning items not on the agenda should be made during the public comment section of the agenda near the beginning of the meeting. When we have completed the regular portion of the agenda, we will go into executive session. At that time, the commission will discuss the proposal and may decide to vote on the application or to postpone the decision. You are welcome to remain and listen to the discussion, but there will be no additional opportunity for public comment at that time. Our recommendations are sent to the city council. In most cases, the city council will conduct a similar hearing and must enact an ordinance before the proposal is finally approved. If the Plan Commission takes a vote tonight, the city council will likely take up this issue at its first meeting next month. If you want information regarding our vote or the progress of the application, you may contact staff at City Hall. I would ask that the secretary read the first item for tonight's regular meeting.
Approval of minutes, March 4, 2024.
Discussion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, meetings are approved. Next item.
Public comments.
This is where anybody here in attendance or online may make a comment on items not on the agenda. Yep. All right, next item.
Public hearing. A 24PC02 AM Clark & Sons, Inc., 7879 Big Bend Boulevard, an application by AM Clark & Sons Incorporated for conditional use permit to allow an automotive repair and services facility use in the existing structure located on a 0.98 acre lot at 7879 Big Bend Boulevard in the C Commercial District.
So you have before you this evening, there's actually 3 CUPs plus a text amendment on this evening. The first 2 CUPs typically would not have gone before you, but there's special instances why both of them are. So I'm going to go through them, explain each of those as we go through them. But just so you note, in both cases of the first 2 hearings, these are just a change of ownership. But because the previous owner had been owning the property for so many years, there is no CUP for them to just automatically adopt. So we're going to walk through both of those. The first one that you have before you this evening, the 24PC02 AM Clark & Sons Incorporated. You can see the property outlined in red. It is currently zoned C Commercial District. It is surrounded on 3 sides by A4 7,500 square foot residence district, some C commercial on both the east and the west. To the west, sort of southwest, is also a city parking lot. And across the street is B1 planned multiple family and C commercial district. Your packet has a series of photos of existing conditions of the property. We primarily like to show you some of the key elements of the property in regards to its streetscape or how you see it on the property. History of this property. The business, AM Clark & Sons, moved to this particular property from another location in Webster Groves and built the structure in 1947. Looking through a series of aerial photographs between the 1950s and 1960s, the addition, which is the back part to the sort of northwest of the building, was built sometime between 1950 and 1960s. And there used to be a single-family residential home on the northern portion of the lot, which was also demolished sometime between the 50s and 60s. So since around then, that entire property has been essentially as it remains today. The structure was built in 47. The addition was built soon after that. The area that's the parking area had been a single family residential, which is allowed in the C district, and it's been since it was removed quite a number of years ago. In 2020, the business was purchased. You all know 2020 was a little complicated for all of us. And so there was some confusion over, normally we would have done a new CUP when the business changed hands. Now the business and the land. So now the land is going to change hands. So we're cleaning this up to address both the previous business change as well as the new upcoming land change of ownership. We always tell you how this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. In this case, the comprehensive plan, since it's a CUP, it's not changing the zoning. However, the comprehensive plan map does identify this as a retail use, which to us is any type of commercial, includes things like automotive services uses. Just as a reminder, and I'm going to read through this one time and not for the other two that are going to be coming after this, but as a reminder, conditional use permits, you are to review this and determine whether the proposed use will not substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, or overtax public utilities. I'm going to quickly go through the analysis of the existing conditions and then what potential regulations should be put into the ordinance. Again, typically we would have had a CUP that had already been governing this business since they opened in this location in 1947, but we didn't have that. So we're trying to put one together that they can then use to move forward. The automotive repair and services facility use is a use that has been in operation since 1947. We do a parking analysis under the new current codes just to verify if there is anything that might be of concern. Just note that because they are not adding any new square footage, technically, we are not required to say that they have to meet the current codes in terms of parking, but we analyze it against it in case there is a concern. But again, they've been operating at this particular location since 47. The current codes would require that they have to have 31 parking spaces. Right now on the site, there are a total of 22 parking spaces identified on the survey. That does not include other areas that are sort of, there's some striped, there's some unstriped. There's also on-street parking. So if you can see in here, I highlighted in blue the formal areas that are striped, as well as some of the areas that are not striped on the lot. There's also on-street parking along Dale that is also able to be used. So the overall code, if they were building this new today, would be 31 parking spaces. And in the overall, we always kind of look at that, but because they're not adding anything, we normally would not have to address or require a certain amount of parking spaces. We always look at, and it's been a new thing that we've put in our CUPs, is confirming hours of operation. That makes it very clear for adjacent property owners if there is something going on late at night or there's any concerns or issues. They have requested 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is what they've been operating Monday through Friday. So staff did not have any recommendations to increase it or decrease it in any way. They at this time have no proposal to make any additions or changes to the property, but you'll see in green, if they follow the current C commercial district setbacks, that is the area that the setbacks would allow additions or other things to be made. We don't recommend placing any additional dimensional regulations on the property. We would suggest that the underlying C commercial zoning would apply for the setbacks on this particular property. I told you I was going to try to make it quick and easy. Before I go to the recommendations, are there any questions about this particular request?
I just really wanted, it seems pretty straightforward.
Oh, leave it back to green. Push it back on. There you go.
So the letter in there said they bought it in August of 2020.
Mhm.
So that's like 4 years ago.
So
And
again,
why did
there
they-
was a lot of confusion in 2020 because we were trying to operate without having people come into City Hall. And the confusion is they kept the name. And so they should have done a new CUP, but because of the name being retained, they continued to pay their business license under that old name. And we weren't completely aware that there had been an actual change of ownership. It was only a change of ownership for the business itself, but not the land. Normally, we'd do a new CUP no matter what. So we are addressing that now because they are now purchasing the property.
So we're, since 47, the other people, they're up to 4 years ago. So they've been in essence working 4 years without this, that they should have had under these conditions.
Correct. We would have put the conditions in place. But again, there's a lot of things that happened during 2020 that were very difficult when people could not enter into City Hall for a number of months.
This is Tony. I was reading through reading ahead on your recommendations. My question had to do with on-site storage of cars. Do they have overnight storage of cars?
So they currently had been operating with overnight storage of cars. So we had not put a change in there for overnight storage. They do some small, they do repairs. So similar to some of our other repair locations, we do allow them to store overnight in other locations around the city. So we only put in that they couldn't store vehicles on unpaved surfaces. Those vehicles would have to be stored on paved surfaces. So they'd have to update if they wanted to have additional spaces to park vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
But I mean, the primary location would be in the 30 spaces on site.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Good. No?
I'm going to go through these recommendations and then the applicant can come forward. So all provisions of the city code shall apply except as expressly modified in the CUP ordinance. This is going to be in all the CUPs that you hear this evening, but I always try to remind people that means that they still have to adhere to building code and signage codes and tree preservation and other things like that. So if they move forward with other projects on the property, they'll follow the standard codes. The approved use shall be automotive repair and services facility use. The primary and accessory structure setbacks shall be those set in the underlying C zoning district setbacks and the additional minimum street setbacks in the zoning code. A minimum of 30 off-street parking spaces shall be maintained on the site. Reductions in this number can be made with the provision of additional bike parking spaces as limited in the city code. No storage of vehicles shall be allowed on the unpaved surfaces near the north and east sides of the lot. Hours of operation shall not exceed 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. On a daily basis, the petitioner shall be responsible for pickup of all litter and all public garage-related trash on their property and adjacent properties and right-of-way. Any new pole-mounted or wall-mounted lighting shall meet light levels in the city code. A minimum 6-foot-tall site-proof fence or wall shall be maintained to enclose any new exterior dumpsters and trash receptacles. And this conditional use permit is personal to the applicant and shall not run with the land. You'll note on some of those, I'm doing a couple things in anticipation. So if they do start to make improvements on the site, a few things we'll just make sure are in adherence.
You mentioned at the start, we normally want to see this, if I heard you right.
That is correct. So if the original property ownership that's been there since 1947 had a conditional use permit, and we did look through our old records to see if we could find one, they're a little bit more difficult to find in the 1940s. If they had had a conditional use permit, This would have just simply been what we call a change of ownership. And so if the new owners had agreed to all the conditions in the CUP that we'd found, this would have gone straight to city council, no public hearing at plan commission, no public hearing at city council, and it would have just been approved as a new ordinance, adopting all of the regulations that were already in place and just changing the name on the CUP.
That's the same for the next one, the church.
That is correct.
Okay, would the applicant like to come forward and share what you'd like and answer any questions we may have? Vic Lenz?
I'm Vic Lenz, and I have with me my wife, our secretary treasurer Sharon, and Troy, our son, who manages the property. Troy has worked there for 24 years and just took over the business when we bought it. When we bought the stock, actually, the company is the same company that's been operating it for the last since 1947. We just bought the stock in the company. So it is still A.M. Clark Incorporated that's running the business. If that helps to answer some of that. Are there any other questions that you would have? Oh, the other thing I would like to mention, our operation hours are 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock. We open the business at 7:30 for customers to drop off cars, and we keep it open until 6 in the evening for customers to pick up their cars. That's why we have the extra time. Any other questions?
Any plans to upgrade the parking lot?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have done some replacement and work in the building. We put all new LED lighting throughout the building. We've replaced all of the electrical service in the building about 2 years ago because it was worn out. But we didn't want to put too much money into it because we didn't own the building. Now we're looking at purchasing the building. And we do plan to upgrade it, paint it, do some work like that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, do we have anyone in attendance that would care to comment on the application? No?
Do you want to ask if there's anyone online
Yeah.
who wants to
I-
speak also?
Sorry, I guess, yeah, I was,
That's okay. No hands.
okay. Next item.
24 PC 03 St. Peter's Chains, 407 Fairview Avenue, an application by St. Peter's Chains for a conditional use permit to allow a places of worship use in the existing structure located on a 0.5 acre lot at 407 Fairview Avenue in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
So you have before you this evening, similar to the last one, a conditional use permit, in this case for a place of worship. You can see the property outlined in red. It is zoned A4 7,500 square foot residence district. All the properties around it are also zoned A4 7,500 residence district. You can see pictures of the conditions of the property. The property has two structures on it. It has the existing church that was built in 1904, and then it has a parsonage structure that was built according to county's records in 1920. So those are photographs of the property and the structures on the property. A history on this property. I could go in on this one for a very long time because we just did a historic designation of the property, which involved a lot of history, but I'm going to sum it down to the structure was built in 1904 by the Bethania Danish Evangelical Lutheran Church. They were the congregation that was in the church from 1904 until the point in time in 2022 when the property was obtained by the Central States Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. That synod put the property up for sale. And so there is a contract on the property for St. Peter's Chains to purchase the property to operate it as a church again. Just one other point of note, in 2024, the City Council approved a local historic designation for the property, including both the structures under Ordinance 9245. I always say we look at the comp plan analysis, the comprehensive plan had identified that this would be a religious facility, which it is going to remain. However, the zoning is not changing. It's just a conditional use permit. So really the comprehensive plan doesn't necessarily come into play because it's the CUP. All of the conditions that we talked about for the proposed use will be in consideration. And so the discussion is that this is a places of worship use that's being requested for the conditional use permit. The church intends to utilize the property for religious services and classes. They have stated they will be holding weekly Sunday morning services. The former church did used to rent out the parsonage as a rental property. The proposed the owners in under contract, they do not plan to rent out that particular property, but to use it as part of the church. A parking analysis for a church is a little more complicated because it's based on the number of seats. So seats, when it comes to pews are considered every 2 feet of a pew is considered a seat. And then on top of it, it's not required to have parking on site. It's required to have parking on site or within 200 feet of the property. So you'll see in this diagram, I highlighted using our GIS map, 200 feet from every property line to identify what other streets could be included in terms of on-street parking. You'll see that it includes Fairview itself. That area of Fairview, if you make the assumption that they should not park within a certain distance of the intersection and moving backwards, could probably have approximately, if they parked very nicely, 9 parking spaces on both the north and the south. There is also the ability to do some parking on Glen Road. There's also a lot that is currently not improved on the site, but if it were fully improved, as well as meeting all of our current codes, which require some buffers to other residential properties, they could probably get approximately 15 to 16 parking spaces established more formally onto their property. Based on the number of seats that they have in the existing church, they're required to have 18 parking spaces. So staff believes that between some on-site as well as the ability to park within 200 feet, they are meeting the parking requirements. Same as before, because they're not doing any additions on the site, we're not required to make them, come into compliance at this time with that parking. But it is something that should they do want to come into compliance, update the parking lot, they would need to meet all of our current codes. Dimensional regulations, we're also supposed to look at setbacks when it comes to the particular properties. I highlighted in green the approximate setback regulations should they wish to do any additions on any of the pieces of property. This is the underlying zoning, which allows you to create front yard setbacks based on existing structures. And then there's a 6-foot side yard, and then there's a rear yard based on the depth of the lot. So that green line is an approximate location of where the setbacks would apply. Again, tried to keep it pretty basic with the information. Before I get into recommendations, any questions for me?
I thought I recalled properties on corner lots had 2 front yard setbacks.
They
Looks
do have
like
2 front yard setbacks, but they're based on, our code says if there's a structure that was built prior to 1956, they're allowed to use the existing front of a structure. So whichever corner is closest to the property line is what you use. And in this case, because of the way that the angle works with the church, their front yard setback over there is actually very, very small.
So were they to rebuild, they would have that same?
Not if they were to rebuild. If they're doing an addition on the property, they can use that setback. If someone were to tear the structure down, now they come into compliance with a different set of front yard setbacks.
We had
This
the,
Tony, oh, sorry.
lot split last time at this property, right?
You had the boundary adjustment.
pardon,
So yes, the boundary adjustment. So that takes into account, the last one was that the neighbor to the east is obtaining a sliver of that land. And that boundary adjustment plat went to the city council for approval after going through plan commission. Their final approval should be tomorrow night at City Council. Then they can go through the process of signing the plat and getting the plat recorded to move that lot line.
Did it read twice at the council?
It was at the previous council meeting a couple weeks ago for the first and second reading, and it's at the third reading for council tomorrow night.
This is
Yeah,
Tony.
Tony, go ahead.
Just to clarify, how many on-site parking spaces are there?
So the parking lot, if you want to call it a lot, is really just a gravel area. So
Mhm.
there is not a formal set of striped spaces. If you look at the aerial photograph and do the measurements, probably you could get somewhere between 13 and 14 if they are carefully parked on the area. Again, you would probably recommend that they would need to upgrade that parking area to more formally get the 15 to 16 spaces.
Oh, you're saying we could recommend that tonight?
No, I'm not saying that we have to recommend that tonight necessarily. The congregation is coming in with quite a few less than the, they've got 90 pew spaces. That is the final ultimate. So if they're coming in at this time, they have a congregation that will start to grow. And when they do start to grow, they would probably want to upgrade that parking lot to meet and be able to more carefully park a certain number of spaces onto the lot. But because they are not doing any additions at this time, if there are no concerns with the traffic congestion per the commission, I wouldn't necessarily require them to upgrade the parking lot right now at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right. Would the applicant
Oh.
like to?
Do you want me to, I'll quickly read through the recommendations.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. All provisions of the city code shall apply except as expressly modified in the CUP ordinance. The approved use shall be a place of worship use. The A4 7,500 square foot residence district dimensional regulations shall apply to all uses. A minimum 6-foot tall site-proof fence or wall shall be maintained to enclose any new exterior dumpsters and trash receptacles. And the conditional use permit shall be personal to the applicant and shall not run with the land. Now, if you
Thank
want.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Would the applicant like to come forward? Father Selway?
Hello, I'm Father Selway. I'm here speaking for the congregation and for the St. Peter's Chains. We've been renting buildings for years now, different various places to use for worship on Sundays. And we are looking to buy this property, which that's why we're trying to get the permit first to see if we can even use it. So that's why we're here for that. And as our intent is to use it as a church as it's been used for the last over 100 years. And as the note showed, we are not even going to be full capacity right now. We have about 40 members, 45 members, with children. So the parking spot issue, I think we estimated maybe 15 cars, usually, 15 to 20 maybe. So that's, I think, generous offer amount for the usual service on Sunday. And so that's what we're hoping to get the permit to be able to use it as a church for the worship on Sundays and classes, after Sunday worship usually. And that's what we intend to use it for.
So you have an established congregation that you will be bringing
Yes,
to
we've been here since the 70s, 80s.
here being
St. Louis area, yes.
Okay.
Different places, but yes.
Okay. Anyone, Plan Commission online, any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
So I do have now, if you're complete, I do have two who want to, on Zoom, who do want to speak. But if you first want to ask if there's
Yeah.
any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here in attendance in person that would like to speak on this petition? Okay. None here. Mara?
So I'm going to move the first person over that just says Zoom user. So if they can state their name and address.
It's Scott Tipton, 424 Fairview Avenue. And I would just be curious about the potential use for the parsonage building. It said it would just be used for church purposes, but I didn't know if the applicant had any specific information on what those might be, because it's really just has the appearance of a single family house. It's closer to the neighboring residential house than it is to the church. So I would be curious about that.
So we'll answer that and we'll allow the applicant to come back and answer in just a moment. Did you have any other comments before I move to another Zoom user? Or sorry, another user?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Mr. Fleischer, you should be able to talk now.
Yes, thank you. This is Gary Fleischer, 415 Fairview Avenue. I'm the neighbor to the east. And I'm inquiring about any additional, I guess, occupancy review that would occur with the church, and especially related to a fire hazard, given that it's a wooden building and not well maintained. I'm wondering if there's been any review done. And also, I would also like to add with Scott's question, just a little more clarification what the parsonage would be used for, and if that is included in the conditional use permit, or if that remains as a single family dwelling. Those are my two questions.
All right, thank you. Mara, would you care to respond to his question first, and then we'll.
Yes. So we did already do an occupancy inspection of the structures and have a list to give the potential new owners. Those are items that they will have to address in terms of basic life safety in order to get an occupancy permit for the location.
All right, thank you. All right, Father Selway.
As regards to the residence house, yes, it would be used for church purposes. So whether the priest coming in to offer the services will stay there, or a caretaker, but it's just solely for church purposes that we'll use it for. We're not renting it out. We're not planning on having anybody stay there or family besides just the church, those who take care of the church or servicing the church.
So it would be used as a residence, though, for people affiliated with the church.
Just these
Yeah.
single family
Yeah.
residents,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And according, yes, we have the also the list of things we have to fix in the church as well, and both a house for to get the permit as well, the permit occupancy that we're working on now too.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right, thank you.
So we just want to note to Mr. Fleischer that we can't bring him back on. He just raised his hand again. We can't bring him back on. It's not a going back and forth with conversations.
Right.
If he has other comments, he can send them to me via email, and we can potentially get them answered before the next hearing before the city council.
All right, thank you. Okay, next item.
24 PC 04 off Elm 8709 Big Bend Boulevard, an application by CNL Management Group LLC for a conditional use permit to allow a drinking establishment use in the existing structure located on a 0.08 acre lot at 8709 Big Bend Boulevard in the C Commercial District.
So this is a more traditional conditional use permit, which is a brand new request for a CUP at a particular building location. This CUP is for first I'm going to identify the property is located in a commercial strip, Zone C commercial. There are A4 7,500 square foot residence districts to the north, as well as some C commercial to the north. To the east and west, there is some additional C commercial district. To the south is C Commercial District and PC Planned Commercial District. The existing conditions, we basically took one photograph mainly because the front of the structure is what is primarily seen. There is a rear part to the structure that has just a tiny bit of land behind it. It's in the former Lark Skincare location that will be leaving that particular location. History of the building, according to county records, the building was built in 1951. The building has had retail and office uses according to what records we have. And other than that, there's been no other uses requested. It has remained C Commercial District on pretty much all of our maps that we have going back to the 1920s. The comprehensive plan, again, I always remind you that I talk about this, but because we're not changing the zoning, we're just doing a conditional use permit. This isn't something that we would necessarily have come into play. Just note that the comprehensive plan identifies this area as mixed use, which is to allow multiple different uses, whether they're commercial, retail, service, restaurants, and other things within the C Commercial District. The 5 factors come into play again for this particular proposed use. So going back into what a drinking establishment use is. So just as a reminder for some of you that haven't been on the commission for a super long time, there was a drinking establishment use that was created in the zoning code because prior to this, you could not have any bar in Webster Groves unless it had a restaurant, or in the case of like a liquor store, had enough sales that the sales had to equal a certain percentage in order to get a liquor license to operate. So in restaurants, you had a certain amount of sales of food that then was in a ratio to the alcohol request. And a number of years ago, there was a conversation about adding a drinking establishment use. That drinking establishment use was added to give the opportunity to have some potential bar type uses within Webster Groves. When we added that, we added an additional, normally we notify people within 185 feet. We expand that when we have a drinking establishment use, and we send it out to 250 feet, just a little bit wider. The drinking establishment use is not asking for a liquor license. What they're asking for is this particular use in this particular location. Just know that our drinking establishment use was set up where you can only have a certain number based on our population. So the overall population only allows 4 drinking establishment uses in all of Webster Groves. There have been 3 applications for drinking establishment uses that the Plan Commission and City Council have approved. However, 2 of those 3 ended up having enough food sales that they didn't end up needing the drinking establishment use CUP. The only one drinking establishment use CUP that has been approved that is still in operation is Perennial's brewing operations. The other ones were Perennial itself, the food, the area where you can eat and drink, and they have enough food sales that they haven't needed it, and Frisco Bar Room, which also has enough food sales that hasn't needed the drinking establishment use. So this is what is being requested. The applicant's requesting to have a cocktail bar with a limited food menu in the existing structure. The use would be limited to the interior structure. There is no space either on the property or on the sidewalk for any outdoor dining / drinking. The parking analysis, again, I remind people, this parking analysis is based on, we do have a more intense parking use because it's based on numbers of seats versus square footage in the structure. The proposal did identify and have a proposed floor plan that had quite a number of more parking spaces than more seats than they intend to put in there. In talking with the applicant, I based it on 60 proposed seats in the facility, which is what they're thinking they're going to probably be proposing. Their parking code is based on numbers of employees on a maximum shift, as well as numbers of seats. They have to have 2 parking spaces for every employees on a maximum shift, as well as 1 space for every 3 seats in the facility. That would require them to have 26 parking spaces. Now, our three business districts are quite different or unusual than they might be if you were out in West County. We have a lot of shared parking based on city parking lots, private parking lots, and on-street parking. This is what happens in Old Orchard, it happens in Old Webster, and it happens in Crossroads. So when we look at these as they come in, whether it's a restaurant in Old Webster or whether it's a drinking establishment use in this case, we look at the overall parking in the area and address how that can be met. This particular parking district has this particular business district has two city public parking lots, one on the north side of Big Bend and one on the south side of Big Bend. On the north side of Big Bend, which we call the Alma lot does not have any restrictions on hours of use for parking. That is primarily during the day used for employees because they can stay in those parking spaces and don't have to move their cars or vehicles. The other city parking lot, which is in the south side of Big Bend, has hourly restrictions to keep the parking moving so that you have the ability for the various businesses that are on both sides of the street to have parking spaces available for customers and clients. In addition, there's on-street parking on Big Bend. I highlighted just the on-street parking in front of the particular block that they are proposing to go in, as well as right immediately across the street. There is also a streetscape project that has been funded that's being coordinated with St. Louis County. That streetscape project is going to have some bump outs to make it easier to cross from one side of Big Bend to the other. And they're going to more formally clean up some of the on-street parking as it continues along Big Bend to the southwest. So in all, the overall numbers of spaces that are potentially available, in particular for the hours that they're requesting, normally the bulk of the businesses in the Crossroads Business District operate on an 8 to 5 type schedule. And this request is for later hours, which would mean that it's almost like a shared use for the parking lots. The parking lot on the south side does not have hourly restrictions after 5 p.m.
Mara, can you go back to that?
Yes.
So you said 8725, that's just behind the building parking for people who work in that strip? What's the parking lot that's right behind?
Oh, no, the parking lot that's right behind is a private parking lot.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's a private parking lot.
For businesses on that strip?
No, it
Or
is a
this-
private parking lot for a business that owns that parking lot.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes. So the blue highlight is the Alma parking lot across the street. That is a city-owned parking lot that allows for the opportunity for people to be parked during the day and there's no restrictions, hourly restrictions. And then that lot that is to the south, only a certain number of those spaces have the hourly restrictions. I kind of tried to highlight the businesses that are on the south side of Big Bend. Each of them have some very specific assigned to them parking because that parking lot was created by those property owners giving land to the city. There used to be a street that went through back there. The street was vacated. The rest of their land was vacated and it created a public parking lot.
Thanks.
So the public lot is what you've highlighted there to the east, right?
Yes.
Yeah, everything out, the designated private spots are in
Those
the
are
unhighlighted.
yeah.
Unhighlighted.
I did not highlight anything that is someone's private lot.
Yep.
They can, obviously any applicant can have a conversation with a private property owner to do something else that might be after hours, but we only take into and address the public parking lots and the public on-street parking in our analysis.
I would assume those private lots follow this property line map on page 2.
Yes, that is pretty rough and approximate. That is from a GIS map from St. Louis County. It's not always completely up to date. You'll probably see in my little, everything's kind of shifted off of the aerial photograph and it doesn't align with the property lines. The survey that should be in your packets has the accurate accounting of their particular property lines of where they own the property. The request was for hours of operation starting at 4 p.m. It had a slightly a lesser request for timeframes on like Friday and Saturday nights. When we went through with other restaurants in Webster Groves, as well as other drinking establishment requests in Webster Groves, we tried to be consistent in allowing all of them to be open to a maximum time of 1 a.m. There was a consistency there in order to, again, be consistent for all. So all other restaurants that have bars in them or restaurants, most of them do have bars in them, are only allowed to be open until 1 a.m. on any particular night. So staff did recommend if you were putting the hours of operation in, that you would match those hours with other restaurants within Webster Groves. The dimensional regulations, there is no change being made to the exterior of the structure. So we would recommend that the C commercial district also just apply. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about performance standards. Some of you may remember a couple years back, we did not have specific performance standards in our C and D commercial district. You had to add them specially into the ordinance. We did make an amendment and started putting them, and we put them into the code in both our C and D commercial district. Those performance standards include vibration, noise, odor, smoke, toxic gases, emission of dirt, dust, fly ash, and other forms of particulate matter, air pollution, radiation and operations, heat and glare. So in particular, the ones that would be most important with this would be both noise as well as light trespass. Some of the recommendations that are being made are to verify and confirm in the site-specific ordinance the decibel level that they are allowed to be at their property line to keep noise levels down, as well as light trespass. So if there were any lights that were put on the rear of the property, it would need to have some sort of baffles to keep the light from going towards the property line, and they have to meet the light levels allowed per the code. So I have that. And then before I get to recommendations, questions.
As far as the public parking, do you know how many people are competing for those spaces and how full they normally are?
So normally they're very full from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. After that, most of those businesses that are there, they do not have standard regular evening hours per se. So that is why the parking lot to the south does not have hourly restrictions after hours. We do not allow overnight parking, but there are no restrictions in those lots in the evenings. So in this case, they are requesting to not be open until 4 p.m., which means that a lot of the heavier traffic use of those parking lots is going to be reduced considerably because most of the people using those lots are done at 5 p.m.
But I mean, employees of those locations would still be there and their employees are going to have to get there before 4. So I can see some overlap.
Yeah, there is going to be some overlap, correct?
And this doesn't apply specifically here. There shouldn't, but you said there were 4, we could have 4 drinking establishments. There are 3.
There's actually,
Well, 1
there's
plus
one.
2, 1 plus 2.
There's only one because
Well,
the other 2 were pulled away.
Hold on.
Sorry.
So, but you said that the other 2 currently meet the bar. So is that something, no pun intended, is that something that is monitored
When they-
periodically? Because if they were to fall off and not meet that standard, then they would become under the one, they would be grouped under the 4 allowed then.
They have to provide information when they renew their liquor license.
Okay. So I mean, at any rate, this would just be, if everything else went, this would still be 4.
If
So
everything else went, this would still be 4,
I
correct?
don't anticipate. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is Candy and Ice Cream Shop going in there? Two
That's
doors down?
2 doors
2
down,
doors down.
correct.
Any concerns about overlap of hours and parking with that?
So they're in the C commercial district. They do not, they're not obviously a drinking establishment use. That's an automatically approved use. And because they're not expanding with any new square footage, there's no analysis of that in terms of their any requirements. So no, I don't believe that there is a issue with overlap. They haven't suggested that they're going to be open late night after hours. But even if they were, again, most of the other businesses along that strip right now close at 5 p.m. I know we had, when Union Bagel opened, the early morning traffic and parking went to a premium, at 7 a.m. on Sunday mornings. But this is more of an evening, a shift to the evening.
I'll shut up for now. Anyone
Mara,
else?
are there any other CUPs in that business district?
No, there are no other CUPs in that business district.
All right.
Doesn't really pertain to this particular property. The cut in that was the picture frame. What is it? Since
So
it's not a public parking lot, I assumed it was like a public lot and that would feed in
No.
to that.
no,
So,
what that's going to be is their outdoor tables for the ice cream shop.
got it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody, commission members online? Okay, recommendations?
So all provisions of the city code shall apply except as expressly modified in the CUP ordinance. The approved use shall be a drinking establishment use. Hours of operation shall be limited to 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. daily. Section 53.114C performance standards shall be followed. Noise in association with the drinking establishment use shall not exceed 55 decibels at any point on the lot line of the lot. Business owners shall be responsible for the pickup of litter and restaurant-related trash on the restaurant property. We call it a restaurant. I know it's the drinking establishment, but I call it a restaurant. And on neighboring properties on a daily basis, the area immediately around the dumpsters. And in this case, there is not a dumpster on site. They will have to address where they're going to deal with dumpsters. They may have to do some shared use with some of the others, but that would have to be addressed again through meeting the code. The area immediately around any dumpsters shall be free of trash, debris, and oil waste, with all trash and waste being placed inside the appropriate dumpsters in appropriate containers. C, commercial district dimensional regulations shall apply to all uses, and the conditional use permit shall be personal to the applicant and shall not run with the land. Those would be staff recommendations should the Plan Commission recommend moving this forward to council.
Why did you codify the noise level, not something like the light level? It's all covered in those performance standards regardless, right?
It is. It's all covered in the performance standards. We have found that the noise level is the one that is the most talked about or discussed. The light level isn't always, it's an easy measurement. The noise level is a little harder to measure, and we do have to get out there at the times when they are the loudest, which is a little bit more difficult because we have to do it, say at 1 a.m. So we do put that decibel level in just to be doubly sure that they are all aware about the noise level.
did
That
you-
was,
sorry.
that was actually during a lot of conversations as we upgraded the performance standards. It matches what St. Louis County has. 55 decibel level is sort of like if they can hear a conversation level at their property line. It's not a very, very loud level, but it's to keep noise buffered and turned in the other opposite direction. So trying to keep the noise level from going towards the rear, which is where single family residential is to the north.
Okay. Thank you. All right, would the applicant like to come forward? Matthew Longville?
Good evening. My name is Matt Longville. I would be the managing partner of this operation. A little history about me, because I'm sure you hear conditional use permit, drinking establishment. You kind of want to know what we want to happen there. I own a company called STL Barkeep. We've been in business in this area since 2017. We started as a consulting company, and most relevant to this conversation, we managed the concessions for the Repertory Theater to try to help them when they were short-staffed coming out of COVID, and try to help them with their financial issues. Currently, we only have one other brick and mortar operation, which is in the city. It is a very tame, mellow cocktail bar. We are not going to be booking live music. We are not going to have DJs. I originally, when submitted this application, it was to close at 11 o'clock, right? So following, the recommendation where everybody else has their license to 1, I understand we can have our license to 1, but we're not trying to have a late night spot for people to overdo it and to party. I got introduced to this property through my sister, Julia Longville, who owns Descendant, which is right next door. And she introduced me to her new landlords, one which is John Lewis right here. John and I have kind of instantly hit it off. He's just a tad bit older than me by 7 years, but has a lot of business experience and is also slowly turning into a mentor, whether he likes it or not. I also have friends that live in Webster. My wife and I are close. We're in Kirkwood. Don't judge me. I know the rivalry's there. But yeah, we're not trying, this is not a spot for kids to come and party. This is a spot where people can come before and after they have a nice dinner at one of the many establishments in Webster. We are going to offer snacks and food because that's important when people are drinking alcohol. But this is, a before dinner, an after dinner spot, an after work spot, if you like. We are happy to oblige if there's concern about us opening at 4 with parking. We're happy to push that to 5. I also, am fully committed to getting to know my neighbors outside of my sister. I also have, because we are in the city, honestly, close to Union Loafers, Bagel Union's, original spot that, I've been talking with them on how to avoid some of the problems that happened when they opened. So I understand the concerns. This is not a place where we want people to come and overdo it. We are not targeting 21, 22, and if you're 25, you probably, need to have a good job and be mature to come hang out with the kind of spot that we want to have. So I understand there's concerns and I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to work with the city. I'm willing to work with the neighborhood. I'm not, I learned my lesson as a businessman at a young age to not be stuck in your ways and to work with your neighborhood and work with the people. And that's what we want this to be. We want this to be a spot for the neighborhood where they don't have to worry about having a drink and then getting in their car and driving home from the city, right? We want somebody who lives behind us, come, walk up, have a drink, enjoy it, nice atmosphere, not loud, not rambunctious, and then go home, so I'm sure we're going to see a little bit of resistance, and I'm here to work with the people that have that resistance, right? I want to make this work. I don't want to be a nuisance. I don't want to be a problem. I want to be an asset to the community, and also having a connection where I've been in this industry in this area for a long time. I understand, we're not coming in and trying to do full dinner and take that away from all the other great spots. Our managing partner was the bar manager at the Block for 8 years before he left to work with me. So he has a really good understanding. I would have asked him to come tonight, but Monday's his only day off. So I figure, maybe he comes in 2 weeks for the city council meeting. If we really, but I'll let people ask questions and I'm willing to respond if they have them.
Anyone? Have you had any discussions with Union Loafers about releasing their, as far as using their lot? I mean, your times should not overlap. Would the patrons be able to park there, the lot behind you?
Sure.
Mr. Smith, that's a great idea. I have it. But I know Ted and I know Sean, and I'm sure there's something that we can work out. I know that they have 4 or 6 spots, and maybe that's something I can talk with them about, maybe that's where our staff parks, right? Their staff leaves at 2 or 3 every day. Maybe I could talk to them and make an agreement, and that's where our staff parks. It's a good idea.
And you said, you believe they'll have 60 at this 60 seats?
I would- I would hope I would love for them to be full, but currently, like, you know, our current business operation, we only have our full to capacity, maybe 8 hours a week. And that's from 6 PM to 10 PM, Friday night and Saturday night. You know, I do expect, because we do offer a higher end product, I do expect for us to be busier out here in Webster Groves as opposed to the city of St. Louis. You know, but yeah, I don't expect it to be a full 60 seats all the time.
What is the spot in the city?
It's called the Vandy. We opened up at the very end of 2022, and it's a 50-seat bar. We specialize in bourbon and ryes and higher end cocktails. We do offer snacks there. We found that area, which is our parent company, STL Barkeep. We kind of established ourselves at the Tower Grove Farmers Market, so just on the other side of Vanaventer. That's why we called it the Vandy, because it's on Vanaventer. So we're looking, the tentative title's Off Elm, because you're gonna go right off Elm to our spot. And so that's what we've done. We've had good relationship with the city of St. Louis. We have no issues, knock on wood. Don't plan on there to be any. But yeah, so currently we're pulling from like the Shaw neighborhood in the city. That's who's coming over. And then there's a lot of, my network as I've gotten older, there's, my network is out here. John's from here. Like I said, my sister owns the business right next door. So there's a lot of people that are looking for the product that we have, the environment that we're putting out, but they want it closer to home. And this kind of seemed like a perfect fit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take comments from the audience, I'll say. Allison Larkins, please.
Thank you. Good evening. A lot of it was already addressed, but if I heard correctly, one of your mandates is to make sure that something will not increase traffic congestion. I'm going to hash the traffic again because I live here. I live on Alma, more or less directly behind the petitioner. And unfortunately, what I found with Union Bagels is that it hasn't stopped. Most egregious is the myriad violations right at the no parking sign at Elm and Big Bend. And as many parking lots as are available, people being people will take the easiest option. And I'm afraid that at night and with increasing frequency, this will continue to be a problem. And this creates a great blind spot. Literally, I cannot see, my neighbors cannot see to get off the street. We also have people parking on our street. It's a fairly narrow street relative to the ones around it. It's one-way parking on one side. And a lot of my neighbors need part of those spots for their own cars and some of their visitors. Often they're not available. I know the parking lot is available. I hear the logic of your non-overlapping hours, but my concern remains about the increased traffic and whether this small area can handle it. Also, in terms of the performance standards, I know that you're being limited to 55 decibels, and despite what you do in your own establishment, you have no control over what people do at 11, 12, 1 a.m. when they're leaving. And, I love alcohol. It's a great food group, but we speak loudly when we've had a bit, and we're friends. But unfortunately, they'll basically be speaking loudly in our backyards. So respectfully, I understand owning a business and I wish you well, but I do believe this is not the best location for this one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak? Online?
I do have someone online.
Okay.
So it just has iPhone and a phone number. If you want to unmute yourself and state your name.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. My name is Karen Hagan, and I live directly behind this establishment. The parking lot, the back parking lot is right at my front yard. So I think the increase in traffic and noise is maybe untenable for where I live now. It's just so close to my house. And the traffic has increased lately with delivery trucks will probably pull up right in front of my house. I mean, there's going to be a lot more going on. So I don't think it's a great place for this kind of establishment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else online?
I don't see any other hands raised online.
Would the applicant like to respond to any of those comments?
So my response for this is, of course, nothing but respect, and I acknowledge what they're saying, and it's, you know, you're 100%. People have a couple drinks, they're going to be a little bit loud. You know, I want to, like I said, I want to work with the neighbors. You know, I'm open to having earlier closing hours to try, you know, and mitigate that problem. The person who spoke on the Zoom talked about being directly behind that parking lot. I like to point out that that parking lot is, you would not have access to it, because my business, our landlord's business, doesn't own that parking lot. So, you know, that direct lot, you know, I get it. You know, we're not going to have music pumping outside. You know, and like I said, I respect it. I want to establish an open line with our neighbors. And, you know, if there are problems, I want them to know that I will listen to them and I will do everything I can to correct those problems. But as a business owner, and I think you all probably understand this, Webster Groves is a great place to do business. The process, like working with her, doing all this has been a breath of fresh air after somebody who opened up a cocktail bar in the city of St. Louis. You know, so I don't want to put that in jeopardy. I want to, you know, I want this to be something that is for the community, that people are happy of. You know, one day if this bar is successful enough, I guarantee you I'll move my family from Kirkwood and we'll live here. So jokes aside, I hear the resistance. I validate it. It's real. And I'll do everything to mitigate those problems if we are granted
Matt,
the
I
opportunity. to do
imagine the deliveries would be on Big Bend. If you were-
Deliveries will be on Big Bend, you know, and we can even specify those hours with our distributors. It's a conversation I've already had. You know, and then there was I think something about our waste bins, you know, because of the existing relationship with Sean and Ted from Bayville Union. You know, we can talk about that. You know, I can't reiterate enough, like how much I want to be a part of this community, how much I want to do business here. And I want it to be, I don't want to be a detriment to the neighborhood. I want it to be something that enhances it and people enjoy.
That back door shown on the plans, is that a public
That is,
ingress or just emergency?
that would be emergency only,
All right, so people will not be spilling out through there into that back lot.
correct? Unless there's,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So someone new did, well, no, they raised a hand and then they took their hand down. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, and then they raised their hand again. Let me see if this
Let's
is
check.
someone before you close the hearing. So the person who just says admin, could you state your name and you can unmute?
Hey, I'm Neil Thompson. I live right across the street, right next to Karen, 2 doors down from Allison. This is by far the worst news that's happened to us since we've lived here for 23 years. We left the Soulard neighborhood to get away from bars. I grew up in Webster. It was a city of fine homes, not a city of fine alcohol. There was no bars until 1970s. Now we're knee deep in bars. When they made that law 2017 or whenever about putting 4 or 5 bars, I don't know how they shoved that past everybody. I don't know very many people that would be in favor of that. We got bars all over this town. We don't need to have another one here. Nobody's proposing a bar down in Kirkham. I mean, on Marshall, down from the coffee shop and plant shop. I'm assuming those people would have the same reaction as Karen and Allison and I and my wife are having. It's ridiculous. I appreciate that it's better than when you were at the Vandy and whatnot, but take your little project and put it by your sister's house, not by our house. We got a nice.
Oh, sorry.
Is that it?
Sorry, I accidentally, I was trying to lower your hand and instead I muted it. So your last couple sentences, if you want to repeat.
You threw my train of thought off there. Sorry. But we're against it. All of us are against it. We have no desire at all to have another bar. It's certainly not 250 feet from my house. People talk loud, people get drunk, people pee when they have to, and people get in fights and shoot people and all kinds of nonsense that would never happen if we didn't have another bar around here. I know it's wonderful and peaceful down in Big Webster, but that's Big Webster. Everybody's used to that being like that. This is just a little neighborhood that had 4 or 5 accountants and whatnot. Not bars, and we don't want bars. So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
One more hand is now up. JL, yes, can you go ahead and state your name?
Hi, my name is Julia Lenig. I am a business owner of Descendant Boutique in the Crossroads District.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to come on. I've been listening to all the comments and to offer a business owner's perspective of the neighborhood. The other businesses and I have been looking for this development. We really want to see more action in our neighborhood and the right type of action. We also don't want, some big, crazy, loud thing. My understanding is that this bar would be more of a upscale type of establishment. And as a business owner on the street, if these types of businesses won't be allowed to come in, whether or not it's this one or moving forward, I don't know if I would like to even keep my business on that street. And it's really disappointing kind of to hear that the trajectory of the Crossroads District is not favorable to grow. But that's pretty much all I have to say. And that in talking to other business owners on the street, besides maybe some of the offices who don't really care if it goes either way, that most of us feel that same way.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you one chance to respond to any of the later comments. But don't feel compelled. Okay. All right. Next item.
D 24 PC 05 zoning code text amendment, tattoo or body piercing establishments. Proposed amendments include changes and additions to sections 53.020, 53.159, and 53.192 of the zoning ordinance in order to amend regulations for tattoo or body piercing establishments in commercial and industrial districts.
So this will be quite quick. We've had a couple requests for things like permanent makeup and medical tattoos. Sometimes that runs a fine line because when we initially updated our zoning code to address a lot of uses that we didn't have listed, we did what was the standard tattoo and body piercing establishment definition. We amended the codes in 2014 to kind of clean up a lot of our older uses that didn't really define what people did today. And then in 2023, when we were based on what the state had required, when we were putting in marijuana dispensaries, we were looking at some of the separation distances and then realizing that in some cases, having them be able to still apply for a conditional use permit and get feedback from the neighborhoods that potentially upgrading or updating our tattoo and body piercing establishments to allow someone to come forward with a CUP if they're going to be within a certain distance of some of the uses that they're not allowed to be within. So we're not making any changes to the use chart. It already says that you need a CUP for a tattoo or body piercing establishment, but we did make a minor amendment in the definition because we are getting a lot where it's a salon, and that salon does have someone who wants to do permanent makeup or wants to do some of the medical tattooing for those who are trying to address scarring and other things like that. So we updated the definition to say, or when accessory to a primary personal services use, which covers all of the different salons and other personal care locations. And then we added the option that you could apply for a CUP. So if you were closer than any of these distances, closer than 1,000 feet from an educational facility or a place of worship, we have a lot of places of worship in Webster Groves. If you were within 500 feet of a child daycare center or 150 feet within another of the same use, that you could still apply for a conditional use permit and go through that process versus being just completely not allowed to go in particular locations. So that is the only thing that we brought forward. It's a pretty minor amendment to the code, but we just added in here in the same one where it already has marijuana dispensary facilities. We just changed it to also say and tattoo or body piercing establishments. If they're within those other distances from the religious institution or the educational institution, they can apply for a conditional use permit. Any questions?
No? Okay.
The personal use is that in the first definition, it talks about when accessory to a personal use or whatever, that's the personal services is defined in here.
Yes.
That's what that means.
Yes. Yeah, personal services shall mean a business that provides specialized service specific to an individual, which includes barbershops, beauty parlors, day spas, nail salons, tanning salons, and similar services.
Okay. Any of the commission members online care to comment?
Not at this time.
Okay. Anyone in attendance care to comment? Any members of the public online care to comment?
No one online.
No one cares, Mara.
No one cares.
Okay. Okay, very good. Next item.
You can go to
Motion to close public hearing?
Yep.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Annie, I'm assuming you meant
That's a delayed aye.
it was a delayed aye.
Yes, aye.
Thank you, sorry.
It's here all night, Andy.
Okay. We're in executive session. Next item.
24 PC02 AM Clark and Sons, Inc., 7879 Big Bend Boulevard, an application by AM Clark and Sons, Inc. for a conditional use permit to allow an automotive repair and services facility use in the existing structure located on a 0.98 acre lot at 7879 Big Bend Boulevard in the C Commercial District.
Okay, discussion?
Well, unless I have any discussion, it's just question. Do we want to go through the factors?
I will if there's no discussion.
Can we display the 6 factors to guide our discussion? Or 5, I'm sorry. That's why I need them up there.
I'm putting this one up just because it's the closest one in the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll go through these one by one with a roll vote. But any discussion prior to that?
Yes. This is Tony. Did they have to submit a development plan with this CUP?
They would only have to submit a development plan if they were planning to do an addition.
Okay.
So right now, their survey acts as their current development plan.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll go through the factors then. Does anyone believe it will substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion?
No.
No.
Nope.
Increase fire
No.
hazards?
No.
No.
No. No.
Adversely affect the character of the neighborhood?
No.
No.
Adversely affect the general welfare of the community?
No.
No.
Or overtax public utilities?
No.
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 Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve 24 PC 02 AM Clark and Sons Inc.
Second.
Second.
Second, yeah.
all right, moved and seconded. We'll just go through a roll call
With the staff conditions.
with
Yeah.
staff conditions. Thank you. All right, Grace?
In favor. Aye. Yes.
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 Mike?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. All right. Approved. Next,
Really quick, just as a reminder, all of these that are voted on this evening, the public hearing is on the 16th of April versus the next
Next.
meeting in next month. So it will be another public hearing for all of these items. No matter how the outcome this evening, they will all have a public hearing on April 16th.
thank you.
Okay, that's good to know.
All right, next item.
24 PC 03 St. Peter's Change 407 Fairview Avenue, an application by St. Peter's Chains for conditional use permit to allow a places of worship use in the existing structure located on a 0.5 acre lot at 407 Fairview Avenue in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
All right, discussion here.
We go right to the factors. I would submit, if anything, this is good for the community to have that building occupied. Get some people in there.
Michael, it's really hard to hear you if you can get closer to the mic.
As I think it'd be good to get some people in that building and have it occupied, especially with the use that was originally intended. So if anything, number 4 is, it's good for the welfare of the community.
Okay, sounds like that's all the discussion. So we'll go through the 5 factors. Substantially increased traffic hazards or congestion?
No.
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 Okay, I'm gonna allow a little time for those online. Substantially increased fire hazards?
No.
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 Okay. Adversely affect the character of the neighborhood?
No.
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 Adversely affect the general welfare of the community?
No.
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 Or overtax public utilities?
No.
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 All right, we're in agreement on the factors.
I move to approve.
Okay, it's been
Second.
moved.
Second approval of staff's recommendations.
All right, moved and seconded with staff recommendations. We will do roll. Start with Grace again.
Yes.
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 Tony?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Next item.
C 24 PC 04 off Elm 8709 Big Bend Boulevard, an application by CNL Management Group LLC for a conditional use permit to allow a drinking establishment use in the existing structure located on a 0.08 acre lot at 8709 Big Bend Boulevard in the C Commercial District.
All right, I suspect we'll have a little more discussion here. I will open it up. I've talked enough on this one.
Yeah, I just want to recognize that I totally understand the concerns that the neighbors on Alma have. When I lived in South City, I had a bar right behind me, and it went from a quiet bar restaurant to having outdoor seating and a different crowd and being very late at night. And it certainly did impact me. So I just want you to know that I really hear that feedback. I do think that given the hours and given that it will be indoor seating and given that parking will be plentiful across the street, and I think people are more aware of that parking. I wasn't even aware that there was parking behind the establishment. I am not as concerned about the noise and the parking. So I'm very hopeful about that situation.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with what Maddie said. I'm sympathetic to the owners. I think just be something maybe like that Serrano's, if I say that right, be kind of that kind of establishment crowd. And yeah, if you live on Big Bend next to a commercial area, it's gonna be busy.
Just going to comment
That's
that this
what
is
I'm
actually
sure.
very similar to some of the conversation we had when we approved Telva's CUP. There are adjacent properties there, and I remember, concerns about some of the same things. I think one thing that's really kind of having me favor approval of the CUP is the way that the hours line up against the other businesses. I think really, when I think about what we're charged with, which is evaluating traffic and the welfare of the community, it doesn't seem to challenge that in my mind, given all of the parking rules are followed. So that's an enforcement issue, I think, and we probably can't consider it, but hopefully we can encourage the residents of the area and the business owners to work together and work with the city for enforcement if that becomes an issue. But overall, I don't think this violates any of the 5 criteria that we're looking at, although I am also sympathetic to the concerns.
Yeah, I would just add that when you think about Bagel Union, they turn customers a lot faster in an hour, so their traffic issues are more compounded. And I also feel like the morning rush is a little more intense than the evening rush, and I think the evening hours are going to be a little better. I think the other thing is, I looked at the menu of the Vandy. The cocktails are not cheap. Tends to be a filter for bad behavior and overindulgence. So, I appreciate those concerns around any drinking establishment, but, I think there's other already established places that probably have a tougher time with that in this town.
Can I ask a question about parking on Alma? Is there potential for restricting any non-resident parking on the street of Alma? Because it is quite narrow.
So what we would probably need to do is it would have to go to the Traffic Advisory Commission. They try not to, there's a few limited streets around Webster Groves where you have to have, like near the high school, where you have to have the special permits and other things like that. It would probably, in order to do that kind of restrictions, have to go to Traffic Advisory.
Yeah, it can't be part of our.
Yeah, it can't be part of the CUP.
That doesn't happen by Rolling Ridge, does it?
Well,
Or does it?
It does
Can
not.
Can I interject personal?
Yeah, you live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are discussing it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that seems just to be, we've heard that for 2 years, 3 years, that seems to be more intense.
Yeah.
And they still don't have it either. So.
Yeah, but it's a consideration for the neighborhood, and it's good. I mean, it's good we have that option if we choose to. So,
But the avenue towards that would be for the residents. There's nothing this commission does for that, right? That's the residents themselves that have to pursue that.
That's
Okay.
correct. Residents themselves have to pursue and ask for, resident only parking. The hard part with enforcement of that is then it makes it harder for them to have guests visiting because, like on some of the other ones near the high school, if you don't have your resident only permit, now they don't have a space to park on the street.
Mara, I'm all for this. Can you talk a little bit about the St. Louis County project though, and how that impacts? Can you pull up a map? Is that just curb cut improvements that will improve some parking on street or?
No, so it's actually pretty substantial. We applied multiple years and it took a while before we finally were able to coordinate. But it is going to include slightly widening of the sidewalks, new street lighting, more decorative street lighting. There's going to be additional bump outs down towards Elm and Big Bend to make it safer to cross over the Big Bend intersection. There's some bump outs that are at Alma that are going to help make it easier to cross over where you get to then access to both the parking lots on both sides of the street. It's going to continue down. And right now, when you come over the railroad tracks, you kind of just come over and then there's like 2 lanes of traffic. They're going to try to make it that it's only going to be like, you won't have, if I remember correctly, and I haven't seen the latest plan, but right now you have no parking on one side during one part of rush hour and no parking on the other side during another part of rush hour. The plan, I think, was to focus it where you can have parking on both sides and that the overall traffic just has to use the primary lanes in the center, which is similar to as you go further down on Big Bend, they had, made it that you had that one center turning lane and a lane of traffic in each direction.
So is that both, if you go down to like 8793 parcel, so both sides of the street, sidewalk improvements, curb
Yes.
cuts? all of
Yeah,
that?
it's going to continue. In fact, it's even going to also continue to the couple of residential properties that are at that horrible corner intersection between Gore, Baker, Big Bend, that whole
The high-speed three-way.
the whole mess through there. There's going to be some upgrades there to make it easier to cross because that's also a route to school for a lot of children. They come through this district and then in order to cross to then go under Highway 44 to get to the middle school. So there is quite a bit of pedestrian traffic through here.
Yeah, I think that'll clean up a lot of the cohesiveness of the on-street stuff. My only concern, it's not the applicant issue, is things that I've done, like I'll park sometimes at Bagel Union on the street, like by 8715, try to make a U-turn, right? Like you're not supposed to do. I've seen people do it all the time, but like that's probably more of an issue for me. And that might just be like something to be aware of for the traffic committee, right? Like, so that was something I was concerned about at the CUP on Lockwood where the coffee shop is now. People trying to make that left to beat traffic, but that's nothing for this.
So once those bump outs are in place,
That
you're
should
not,
fix. Yeah, you're not.
you're not going to be able to do that.
I'm just making you aware of it. I'm doing it, and so.
And sorry.
Go ahead, Tony.
A lot of those, when I was working with the Crossroads District, a lot of those changes, I know that we were talking about working with St. Louis County was to make this district more attractive to businesses. So, we're making the changes and then we're still saying that, or we potentially still say that, we don't want certain things in the business district. I think that's kind of saying two things. What's good for the community and what's good for the neighborhood has to be, this is where I struggle. What's good for the neighborhood and what's good for the community may or may not have the same, might not be the same thing. But in this case, I think it's a good thing. And we have the improvements that are going to be in place. And so I'm leaning toward this project.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. I think it's going to be really good for that area, for all the businesses. So it's been a struggle in that area for a long time. So if we can start getting new businesses in there, I think it'd be great.
I think it's important that that back entrance is not a public entrance or exit. I think that will eliminate a lot and push the noise out to Big Bend, which really shouldn't be an issue anywhere or to anyone. I would offer to the group here that the applicant really originally requested ending times of 10 or midnight as opposed to 1. I think we could consider that as at least providing some potential relief to the neighborhood. I would suggest maybe 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I think we should leave it consistent with the rest of the CUPs with the assurance that the business owner will adjust within those hours if appropriate.
I'm sorry, say again.
We can make it 1 a.m. That doesn't mean he has to stay open till 1 a.m. So
You would be okay if you stayed open till 1 a.m.
I think that we should leave it as proposed. That's my opinion.
No, I'm not going to get any traction there. So I'm not even going to propose.
Good effort, though.
All right, well, I'm on record.
I did not put in there, but sometimes we do. You can put in a delivery location that that deliveries have to be made off of Big Bend. You could put in specific times. I don't usually put those in unless there's, some very specific reason to.
Yeah, there's no other option. I mean, they can't use, I mean, they could use Alma, but
Right, that's private property.
They
Well, they
can't.
could always make an agreement and use that parking lot. I think, in this case, I would support, the applicant's already said he intends to take deliveries on Big Bend. I think that would be a good assurance for the neighbors to know that at least if there's someone's being a little noisy at 11, there's not a delivery coming at 5 a.m. in their backyard too. But again, that's my 2 cents.
Actually, I mean, could you restrict any ability to have an agreement with that private parking lot? So that, there's no opportunity in the future for the business owner and the owner of the private lot to use it for bar parking? Does that make sense? So that way you wouldn't impede on the neighbors?
Yes, so we usually don't do a restriction for private agreements necessarily. We usually allow for private agreements because, but
Private entities having an agreement. Like, I get that. I'm just
Right,
throwing it out
right.
there
It's
to
already a
protect the
parking
neighbor.
lot. It's already being used
Right.
for who knows what private uses at what times of day.
And there's the public lot directly across the street, which is also adjacent to residences that nobody can control.
Well, come visit Tova. It's a lot,
I haven't been there yet. But I will.
so.
Is it more than it was before?
Can we go back to the 5 factors really quick?
yes.
I don't regret anything, but yeah,
Oops.
it's.
Oh, wait.
So I think the other one that was sort of commented on by the public was alluding to character. I think that this, as described, is within the character of the neighborhood. But I did just want to touch on that in case anybody else had comments, because I did feel that maybe that was kind of the root of some of the conversation. What the applicant described and what I know of the community and those adjacent businesses and what we heard from one of the business owners, I think does not support the establishment of off Elm would adversely affect the character. So I just wanted to go on the record stating that because I thought somebody was bringing it up. Yeah.
Thought the business owner was in support. Business owner is.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I think this
I
is in with
think,
keeping.
with Tony, I think kind of got to that. What's good for the neighborhood versus what's good for the
Yeah, I agree with Tony.
neighbors versus what's good for the business district. I think, like it was been said, that district's been suffering, so it's good for Webster and Webster tax base to have businesses. And you live next to Big Bend Commercial District, they, certain things be expected.
And, that's why this is a conditional use. It's so that we can have this discussion. When you have a residential property, adjacent to a commercial property, so we could have these discussions about how it's gonna affect, the adjacent property owners. Personally, and like I said, throughout the discussion, I think it might affect the character of the neighborhood, but I think it might affect it in a good way.
Do we have any concern, I guess I'm struggling with this myself, concern with, we talk about, factor one is traffic hazards. I wonder, I won't say I'm concerned, but I do wonder about people using that lot on the south side of Big Bend and then trying to dash across Big Bend, say at 5:30. I don't know what to do about that. but
Well, the county project will include crosswalks at Big Bend and Elm, improvements there, and then on the
County
south.
project will have a shorter place to cross with the bump outs. It is still a little while until that project happens. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's not going to be.
But it's
an-
been funded.
It's, yes, and they are working on plans at this time.
no, yeah, it sounds good.
The crosswalk is at
Big Bend and
Big
Elm.
Bend and Elm.
But but nothing at all.
Nothing close to.
No.
Yeah.
No, there's no other crosswalks, which is why the project is happening.
No.
There was
that's not
mention
the
of
difference.
parking in a space that was creating a blind spot already. I don't know that this particular application is introducing that issue, but it might be something, again, we can't do anything about it on this commission, but it sounds like an enforcement issue or the traffic advisory commission problem. If that's already consistently happening, I would venture to say it would continue to happen as more patrons visit the area.
Unless the improvements include like curb bump outs. I mean, that would solve the illegal parking in front of Bagel Union if they just bumped out the curb.
So there is a bump out at that location. There is going to be a bump out at that location. And then the other one that is also problematic is at Alma. People do kind of try to pull in that very, very last space before Alma, which then means that it's blocking sight distance because they're not adhering to the street signs.
Since it's a county road, does the county look at the crosswalks at all, or is that really through the city?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Since it's a county road
Mhm.
and they're going to be redoing that road, do they look at crosswalks at all, or is that only strictly through the city?
So this is a joint project between the city and county.
Okay.
So we are funding a portion of it. And then the county is also addressing it. So it's a joint project between the two and they're working with the Crossroads Business District.
Okay.
If it was just the county, it would be a little bit more. But since this,
Well-
from my experience, with the city involved, I'm not too concerned about it. If it was
I mean,
just St. Louis County, I'd be concerned.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, this business area being growing and growing and growing sounds like conversations for the comp plan that we're gonna have, right? I mean, we're gonna be talking about districts later this year. What's the long-term pen for this area? A lot of this stuff could be discussed.
You
there,
are
too.
correct.
All right, I think we're ready for the factors. Factor one, substantially increased traffic hazards or congestion.
Nope.
No.
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 I'm gonna say no. Substantially increased fire hazards,
No.
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 adversely affect the character of the neighborhood.
No.
No.
No. Adversely affect the general welfare of the community.
No.
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 No. Overtax public utilities.
No.
No.
No. All right, we're in agreement there.
I will make a motion to approve 24 PC 04 off Elm 8709 Big Bend Boulevard with staff recommendations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We will take a voice vote. Let's start online. Annie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Maddie,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
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 Chair votes yes. Motion passes.
24 PC 05 zoning code text amendment tattoo or body piercing establishments. Proposed amendments include changes and additions to sections 53.020, 53.159, and 53.192 of the zoning ordinance in order to amend regulations for tattoos or body piercing establishments in commercial and industrial districts.
All right, no factors here. Any discussion?
I think it's a good cleanup.
Yeah, and this is a sign of the times. This is what, this is what's happening. Permanent makeup.
Definitely more inclusive, which I think is kind of the goal that our whole community is moving towards. So I think it's great.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The zoning text amendment as presented.
It's been seconded and moved. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We need to do a roll on this one. Yep. All right. We'll start online again. Annie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Maddie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Christopher.
Yes.
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 Chair votes yes. Motion passes. Next.
Other business.
So for those of you that, I think I said in the email, we have hired a team to do the comprehensive plan. We had our first phone call with them last week. We're going to be working on setting up a schedule. We're looking potentially at their first trip in maybe toward the end of this month. But we will get involved with everyone, give everyone the timeframes. Just as a reminder, you all get to see it. So there might be some conversations of people saying, well, why am I not on like this special, this or that? It's all going to come to you. And then there will be some different groups that will be assigned to different elements of it. There will be pop-ups at events. So at Webster Arts Festival, at the community days, at other places. As soon as I get the schedule, I will let you know. The time frame is supposed to be approximately a year. May take a little bit longer, but we're looking at right at about a year.
What firm?
The Lakota Group out of Chicago. They also have 2 additional other consultants that are working with them. And I think we couldn't have gone wrong with any of the ones that we interviewed. They were all very good. And you guys should all thank Jeff because he spent a lot of extra time. We had interviews
Thank you,
all
Jeff.
day, pretty much from like noon until past 5. They did all come in and we interviewed them in person. And it was a really tight decision. No,
We didn't hear that.
they were asking about whether cost was the factor, and it really wasn't. In the end, all 3 of them were very, very close and similar. We had answered about how much we had already approved by the council in our budget. So, it was pretty tight on that. I feel like some of it was just, and again, all 3 of them had a really great project lead. All 3 of them had ideas for how to bring things forward. I wish I could tell you what it was. I mean, it really was down to like tiny, tiny bits.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was their flex, what stood out to me, I think it was their flexibility and they didn't come in and say this, probably, maybe I'm mixing them up, but they didn't say this is the plan. They said, this is what we think, but we're going to come in and talk to you guys, see what's important to Webster. So they took their time when they came in town to drive around town. The fact that they were out of town, I think could bring some good perspective. They've done a lot for similar-ish communities elsewhere, so.
Correct.
Great.
We only see, they'll only come at the end to present
Not that they're going to come
final
at the-
drafts.
No,
just
no,
this.
no. You're going to see them at different points in time, but yes, when they finally come with, you'll still be able to go to all the
Right.
different,
Yeah.
key points to get feedback.
Really interested. Yeah, we could do all of
But
those things.
when it does come, once they get to that point and they're bringing the document forward, it comes to Plan Commission
That
and then
review.
makes its way to City Council. Other than that, unless anyone has any questions, I don't have anything yet for the next meeting in May. There is potentially for a biggish project in June, but I'll know a little bit more in the next week or so. But I don't have anything that's been turned in so far for the May meeting.
In that case, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
In favor? Everybody?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
I did like the way stuff to go from church